most of my program and research interest right now is going into this thing called adaptive behavior. Here's the definition from Bill Ewart in 2005. I'll just read this. Adaptive behavior is defined as those skills or abilities that enable the individual to meet standards of personal independence and that would be expected of his or her age or social group. Adaptive behavior also refers to typical performance of individuals without disabilities in meeting environmental expectations, so there's a norm reference component of it. And this is important. Adaptive behavior changes according to a person's age, cultural expectations, and environmental demands. So up until recently, I worked in New York City. The skill set, the adaptive behavior skill set to survive in New York City is different than the adaptive behavior skill set necessary to survive in Ottumwa, Iowa. And the skill set in Ottumwa, Iowa is different than that in Seattle, Washington. And Seattle, Washington is different than New York, and so on and so forth. Adaptive behavior really is directly tied into where you live, what you do, what you want, how you're going to obtain it. As such, this is a very complex and variable set of skills. Historically, we haven't really looked at this in autism spectrum disorders. We've looked at functional skills, which we'll talk about, or ADLs. But deficits in adaptive behavior are not considered a core symptom. Even with DSM-5, they're still not considered a core symptom. In DSM-4, text division, we actually said that individuals with Asperger's syndrome have no delay in adaptive behavior, which we now know is outright false. I like the term adaptive behavior better than I like the terms functional skills or ADLs for a number of reasons. But I think primary among them is that often when we approach parents to talk about adding more functional skills into the IEP, they sort of hang their heads down as if we're giving up on their kid. We're not pursuing academics anymore. We're not continuing on this trajectory that may get him into college or back into high school or whatever. So adaptive behavior, though, encompasses a much broader area of competence. And I point out to my families that, a simple adaptive skill, crossing the streets in New York City, I think is more complicated than inferential calculus. There are 14 different steps in it, and there are breaks in it. I think I may have a slide in here that shows you what I mean. But that's an incredibly complex skill, more complex than some of the academic stuff we're trying to teach, and far more important in the individual's life. Adaptive behavior competencies are not characterized by ADL skills. ADLs, for those who don't know the term, it's activities of daily living. It's often a sort of curriculum classification. So it's like sleeping, loading the dishwasher, making the bed, doing the laundry. I think it's fairly true, if not completely true, to say that ADL skills really just sort of constitute chores. That there isn't more to it than that. So I think it's important that we now start talking about things beyond simple chores and this whole thing of adaptive behavior. Involves both simple and complex decision-making skills. It's central to your use of academic competencies. I'm really getting tired of meeting adults with classic autism. Now, just so you know, I don't like the terms high functioning and low functioning because I think they're A, inaccurate, and B, really only relate to the individual's vocal verbal behavior, how much verbal language they have. Has nothing at all to do with functioning level. And I know some individuals with untestable IQs who have jobs and live in the community and participate in a diverse array of activities. And I know individuals with an Asperger's syndrome, quote unquote, high functioning presentation who stay at home all day, don't bathe, and play computer games. In this case, the person with the untestable IQ really would be the higher functioning person, because language is not about functioning. Functioning is about doing, and that's what we need to concentrate on here. with that, I would say I'm somewhat, so the terms that I will use, classic autism is a term that I will use to refer to those kids who typically might be referred to as low functioning. And I would say Asperger's type, although I have to come up with a new word now, a new label with DSM-5 to refer to kids who have much more language and would be typically considered high functioning, okay? But I'm tired of meeting guys with classic autism who can identify the poison label but will still drink the poison. I'm tired of meeting guys who can identify the exit sign but don't know that's how you get out of the building. Any number of these academic competencies that we teach, but we don't teach to their pragmatic use. And that's where adaptive behavior will come in. These are not always highly preferred skills, but then again, some are. I think many of the daily care skills that we work on, toothbrushing, wiping after a bowel movement, those things are not really highly preferred skills by many of my kids. They're all socially reinforced, they're all pretty intrusive, but that doesn't mean they're any less important than anything else. So there's a real diversity of skills within this adaptive behavior repertoire. Adaptive behavior is important because the world doesn't always play by the rules. You can see this sign here, and you can see at the top that there is a blank space. Now, I'm assuming most of you on this presentation today can easily fill in that space with the word no. So it's like no fishing anytime by police order. Nobody puts up a sign that looks like this and says fishing anytime police order and leaves a blank there. And if you actually were at this site and you looked 15 feet to the left or 15 feet to the right, excuse me, you would see similar signs but with the word no still intact. But now a client of mine who loves to fish starts fishing here, thinking that he's following the rules. It's a true story. I caught up with him, so he was fishing. We resolved it pretty easily. But now pretend I'm a cop and I come upon this young man fishing. The cop is going to say, excuse me, you can't fish here. My client is going to say, yes, I can. It says I can fish here. Now, because my guy is high verbal, the cop is going to think he's something of a wise ass or a smart ass, or he's arguing with him. And now we're going to get into another situation where an individual ends up involved in the criminal justice system. Adaptive behavior is important because the world doesn't always play by the rules. Okay, adaptive behavior is just what it sounds like. It allows you to adapt to new and changing situations in your environment. It also is directly related to adult outcomes. Majeski and colleagues noted that it's not an overstatement to say that adaptive behavior will get you through times of no academic skills better than academic skills will get you through times of no adaptive behavior. And you've all done this. You've all faked your way through some situation where you had none of the academic knowledge necessary. Whether it was by nodding your head and agreeing, or just staying quiet off to the side, or following the pattern of somebody else, you got through the situation even though you didn't know what you were supposed to do. Okay? Adaptive behavior without academic competencies still works. Academic competencies without adaptive behavior does not work. So, to give you sort of a couple examples, reciting a chemistry equation is academic, but using that equation to pull a MacGyver would be adaptive behavior. Being able to identify the word poison, already talked about this, but not drinking from the bottle is adaptive behavior. And then also sitting through a conference is academic responding, but using the information obtained during the course of that lecture is adaptive behavior. So what you're doing right now is just pretty academic. The extent to which you now take any of this and use it in your own practice or within your own family is when it becomes adaptive behavior.